Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin. As founder of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my privilege to welcome you to our nonprofit empowerment series. And this is webinar 126. And we're going to make it special for you. We have an international rock star as a special guest, Marcy Heim. Marcy Heim is truly nothing less than a force of nature, okay? Nothing less than a force of nature. And for inspiring people for something she's so passionate about, that's generosity and what philanthropy can do so well. Well, little surprise that she is one of our profession's most in-demand keynoters, speakers, and presenters. And we estimate that she's given between live and virtual presentation, 4,000 presentations. So she's a little ahead of me. And she is the author of Empowering Your Board. She works with both practitioners and volunteers. Empowering Your Board to serve as effective development ambassadors. And how soon? Soon we'll be releasing her second book, which will be Asked for Anything Artfully. What's the timeline on that second book?
When I can stay home long enough to finish it.
I doubt that's going to happen then. And by the way, she's also an accomplished singer and entertainer, and has performed in front of multiple audiences. And not surprisingly, she's been honored and saluted with every available award and recognition there is in the fundraising world. We have a half zillion questions. Are you ready?
Sure. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. You know, your journey in becoming one of the nation's best known and respecting fundraising authorities had a fascinating start because your education and training is as a biochemist and animal scientist, okay? Can you tell us how that preparation helped shape your approach for the success you have enjoyed in your career?
Well, Jim, it's entirely responsible for me having a career in development and fundraising. So I did the biochemistry because I did all of my pre-med and pre-vet work, and I actually got into vet school and then realized that really wasn't my calling. I think sometimes in life we talk about, boy, someday I'm going to be a vet. And when I actually had the chance to do it, that wasn't it. But at the same time, the dean of the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences at UW-Madison said, Marcy, we're starting a brand new program here. It's the first time ever we'll have a fundraiser for the college. And I said, well, that's really nice, but I can't ask people for money. And he said, well, just come down and, just come down and talk to us. Just come down and talk to us. Well, honestly, that was my calling. And so I was the youngest fundraiser the university ever hired. And I'd pop around in my red and white Bucky overhauls. And, I got to tell you, Jim, there were some fun stories back then. Sometimes my first calls, I'd go out and they'd say, oh, we thought you'd be older. And I said, well, sorry,
a little time. Well,
we've got some older folks back at the office. I can send them out, and you're here now. You might as well stay. So it was a delight. It was truly my calling by accident.
I never knew that. And by the way, I think there's a Nobel Prize winner that's probably happy that you didn't stay in the bioscience field. Okay.
Well, the other thing, Jim, that was really important and even more important with how it happened is the faculty knew me. And this is a time when development work at major universities was just really getting started in the mid to late 80s. And so I knew those faculty members. So they were much more open about talking to me about getting together with their alumni and others and approaching the subject of investing in their departments because they knew who I was. So it was a great way to be able to start already having a relationship with so many of the faculty that I got to work with. And I was there 23 years and absolutely loved every second of it. Go Badgers.
How is your football team doing this year?
Yeah, it's mixed, but we're pretty good. We've got a new coach. We won last Saturday. It was a great game. And it just so happens I've got just behind me you've got to have Bucky all over. Oh, you won't be able to see it because of the blur, but there's
Hey!
Bucky. He's here and he's within my office. And and the University of Wisconsin is an incredible place,
Yeah,
as
it
you know.
is. It
But it
is.
was a great way to start. And honestly, again, being able to know the faculty that I was working with just put me light years ahead than having to develop all those relationships.
Hey, Marcy, why do you think so many business and community leaders who are virtually fearless and everything else they have to go Badgers, Chris, you got some friends there, um, who are virtually fearless and everything else they have to face in their professional, personal, and civic lives are terrified for asking for gifts?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. And fear is crippling. So that fear that we feel around asking for money is really very destructive and very crippling. And I think we have to remember that our money mindset. So I'm all about the mindset and methods of major giving success, not just the methods, but the mindset is where I like to focus. And that money mindset's formed at a young age. There's not enough. We can't afford it. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. And almost all of my workshops, I'll ask those questions and they'll say, Trace, Artful. And then I say, blank rich. And that really points out a bigger issue that we have in this country, a problem with how we view and how we feel about wealth. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being wealthy.
Yeah.
They're incredible.
I can think of a few things that might be good about it.
Exactly. And so I think some of
including being a philanthropist.
Some of it is looking at our own money mindsets and getting a sense of how we feel about our own financial success and stability, and to be sure that we're not resentful of the wealth of others is really important. So one thing is to get a hold of our own money mindset. The second thing that I think really helps with people who have this fear is to be a donor themselves. So experience what it's like to
And that
invest
is, you
in
can
something
say,
that's
join me, right? Join me.
exactly to invest in something that's important to them and hopefully feel that own joy of giving. And finally, I think that we have an opportunity to let people do something significant with their dollars, whether it's $25 or 25 million. So we take their success and turn it into something significant. And when we talk to the people who have been and had significant and successful lives and let them know that that's an incredible way to let other people also have that experience, I think they're more comfortable doing it.
Marcy, except for the early days as a biochemist and animal scientist, philanthropy has been part of your life for just about your entire career.
40 years.
40
Yeah.
years, a muzzle tov. What are the most significant changes you've observed over those 40 years, and what hasn't changed?
Another great question. So probably the thing that's changed the most is, of course, the explosion of information.
Yeah.
And the data that's available and it's almost overwhelming, frankly. I think that today it's not that we don't have choice, we have too many choices.
Yeah.
There's almost this overwhelmingness of information and technology and all of that. But I think that the good news of that is it lets the smaller nonprofits participate and have access to some things that the bigger players have at a place in a way that they can afford it, and that's a real good blessing of that information explosion. What I don't think has changed is people give because they believe in your mission and want to make a difference, and that has not changed in 4 decades. If you look at what Penelope Burke's research has told us about why people give, that's been number one, and I would be testimony to that. That's not changing. The second thing is, why do people give? According to Penelope's research, is they were asked. And there's no little bird that flies around and says, you can give, you can give, you can give. So we still have to have those conversations and let people know what their dollars can do. But what has changed, Jim, and it hurts my heart, is when I started, the whole idea of being a sound and ethical organization was down at like 21, 22. Now it's 3. So that whole reason for why you invest in something has changed. In our industry, there have been situations that, where there's been fraud and mismanagement of dollars and money not going to what donors intended to. And that hurts us all.
Yeah.
And it also is something that today, I want that board member sitting beside me saying, we're a sound and accountable organization. I know what's happening in my room, but that's something that I do see has changed over the years. Now, another thing that hasn't changed is back when I started, about 6% of the dollars came from corporation. It's 5 to 7 today. About 80% of all the money given came from individuals,
Right.
and plus or minus a little shift in family foundations, that's about the same.
Right.
So the split of dollars from individuals and foundations and corporations has really been relatively consistent over the decades.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
that's
one
why
thing that
we say that
changed.
individuals should always be a big part of your prospect list.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we love corporate and foundation money. Folks, we want you to make sure you have your volume tuned up here. Marcy, as much as anything, you're known for instilling the joy, the spirit of joy into fundraising and asking, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or investing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're also a very accomplished singer and entertainer, and you've even written a song about celebrating donors. We're going to put you on the spot. Would you mind sharing a quick rendition of your donor song?
Well, honestly, Jim, there are lots of songs. So now I have to make that decision about what song. And I think a lot of people know "People Love to Give Me Money." They know that song.
Yeah.
But today I think I would share my latest song. And it's really set out to the development professionals as well as the donor. And I call it "Shine On." And the important message in that is that we don't have jobs, Jim. We have a calling. So it kind of goes like this. And I don't have any music, so you are putting me on the spot to sing a cappella.
I know, folks, I'm responsible. I'm the bad guy.
But, so I'm going to kind of hear the music in my head.
What's that called? Randa as a singer, by the way, a cappella or something? I don't know.
All right. You have a calling, not a job. Building a world where all belong. Connect your givers to your cause. Share your story. Leave your mark. Decide to shine today. Shine on. Shine on. Own your future. Make it strong. Invest in joy. Be a light. Shine on. Shine bright. That's a short version.
Randa, I get 2 thumbs up. What do you give? Audience, how many thumbs up? Audience, how many thumbs up? I gave it 2. Thank you, Marcy.
That was fun.
Hey, Marcy, one of the things you teach is that no fundraising program is going to achieve its true potential without really focusing on a major gifts initiative.
Right.
For those nonprofits who don't have a major gifts initiative, what are the first steps to get one, to organize one?
That's a more complicated question because it really depends on how, every nonprofit has its story and how long they've been there, what their current relationships are with donors, what kind of nonprofit they are. So there's a lot of things around it. But I think you can, in general, say, first off, and I'm going to start where I always start, you got to get inside your head because you need to adapt a major gift mindset before you're going to get anywhere with it. There are development professionals that can do all of these right strategic things and they aren't successful in major gifts because they haven't changed their thinking. In their head, they're not able to secure major gifts. Their organization isn't one where people invest major gifts in. They don't have donors who are capable of major gifts. That's all head trash. That's all stuff in your head. So the place you start a major gifts program is in the mindset of the executive director and the major gift officer. And then you do things like look at, data mine your annual fund and see who are your most major donors now. And then I think the other thing that a lot of places miss is you've got to have a vision. Big donors want big visions.
Yeah.
Gee, we're about 200,000 short of finishing out our operating expenses this year is not a big vision.
Oh.
So big donors want big vision. And when you've got that vision and you put it into bite size, what I call vibrant options for giving. So you can have donors understand these kinds of dollars have this kind of an impact. That's when you can start having conversations at a different level. It's not just give to us, it's do these specific things with us, be a partner with us in this vision.
Marcy, we like to organize the fundraising cycle into 4 phases. The first one is discovery, then cultivation, then investment and stewardship. Can you talk about how to think through a strategy for major gifts, starting with discovery, cultivation, investment, and stewardship?
And Jim, before I answer that, I want to personally really thank you for that, because and you're being such a great friend and partner with me in this, I have a real aversion to the word solicitation. I think it's an ugly word. Who wants to be part of something where there are big red circles on doors saying no solicitation? Who wants to be part of something like, hey, big fella, what you doing after the show? I mean, to me, it's just a word that doesn't fit with us. And you called it investment. And I am very grateful to you. That really honors me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'm grateful that you're sharing an hour with our learning community.
Well, all right. So now to answer your question, discovery. To me, a lot of places would call that prospect identification. And I think, again, the words we use are so important because our mindsets are important. How do we plant that mindset? Our words, out of our mouth into our brains. So if we think of discovery as asking the question, do we share values and interests with this particular individual? Do we share values and interests? It's not so much about, gee, do they have 3 vacations homes? Do they have this? It's more about, first and foremost, did they share our values and interests? Or if they knew more about what we did, would they get excited about it?
Yeah.
And that to me is discovery. So instead of creeping on somebody on Facebook, if I can partner with my board or partner with somebody who knows these people and say, you're passionate about our organization. Why? And then who do you know? Who's in your world? Who's in your life that shares those values and interests?
Do you believe in the 6 degrees of separation?
No, I think it's more like 2.
Yeah, I think you're in Madison and San Antonio. It is. Unless you're Kevin Bacon, I think it's like 1.
I don't know. I mean,
Hey,
what
by
are
the
the
way,
chances that you spent all those years in Madison?
what is your recommendations on forging? You've identified some folks, forging a personal and emotional bond between the prospect and the mission of your organization.
Well, again, that's a conversation that starts out first being more focused on them than us. And I use this word purposely. Don't go out and vomit all over them about your organization. Nobody wants to be vomited on, right? And and so rather, I say you go out and say, talk to me about a gift you've made that was really special for you, and why was that special? Tell me how you feel or what you know about our organization and how you think our programs are perceived in the community.
People love to be asked for advice, right?
Yeah, but I guess I don't do that in a manipulative way. I do that in a way that really
in
cares
a genuine
about,
way. In a genuine
in
way.
a genuine way that what they're saying. And there have been many a times that I have changed course based on their answers. So to me, yes, you can do research on people, but I feel like I can discover, thus the word discovery, discover more about a potential giver in a thoughtful 35 to 45-minute conversation than I can get on paper at all. And what I'm hoping my board and the staff can do is direct those conversations to people who have the capacity and hopefully a little bit of an idea of what we do, and we feel that they're part of that. So that's that discovery piece. I don't think finding new prospective major donors is really that hard when you think about it that way. I also think your board and volunteers are much more willing to help you when you don't say, all right, everybody, take out a pad and pen now and write down the richest people you know so we can go hit them up. You know, and now, Jim, and here's the thing, you've been in this business a long time, and you yourself are an expert in this, and you know that unfortunately there's some really bad fundraising that happens out there every single day. And nothing hurts my heart more than when, I'm starting to talk to somebody new and you feel them pull back and you're like, I wonder what's going on here. And you say, oh, before we start, just tell me the last time you talked to somebody about investing in a cause, and they give you a
face
story
to face,
that,
by the way, face to face.
Yes. Well, or I'm on the Zoom too, but
or Zoom, the screen to screen, but it's
but you like to be able to see a person's eyes and not just to have to. Right, I agree totally with you there, Jim. I'm a face to face kind of girl, indeed. But you look at these people and you see the hurt, and you see that they haven't had a good experience, and I wish I could eradicate them. I wish there was bad fundraising experience.
I'm sorry, we can't give you that power. Talk about the investment phase.
Sure. Well, so now cultivation is really everything we do to help somebody know everything we do. It's that simple. And I think it's about being creative in that, but also, again, listening. If I'm not a tour kind of person, don't invite me for a tour. No, you always meet the donor where they are in their timeline.
Tell me, do you think asking for $1 million is very different than asking for $1,000?
I think asking for the amount of money that reflects the relationship that's been built works every time. So there's not some magic bell that goes off when you're ready. I used to say, let me tell you when to ask for a major gift. It's 2 p.m. every Tuesday afternoon. And people would say, what? Well, of course, it's nonsense. It's when it's when you've got, it's sort of like, Jim, if the first time you and I met, you'd have said, Marcy, will you marry me? Well, that would have been strange. And because that wasn't the right question for where we were at in our relationship.
Well, we did meet in the bar, but still, it wasn't the right question.
No. And you get that. And I think if we just use, again, common sense, which I get is not always common practice, but common sense, and think about where this person is with us, then the asking and what to ask for becomes very easy. I like, I do like some of the things that the literature tells us, and not saying it has to take this long, but the literature says that from the point that they've been identified in research or by somebody to the point where we're ready to ask, when it's a major gift. And again, major gift is going to be defined a couple of different ways. There's a major gift for your organization. There's a major gift for that donor. So those are two different numbers.
I like what Gerald Penna said. Every gift from a donor's perspective is a major gift.
Yes. But that's generally 6 months to 2 years. So it takes some time to develop that relationship. And then it's knowing and having clear options for giving and giving those opportunities and having those conversations till the donor kind of leans forward and tells you what out of those opportunities makes the most sense. And then finally, the final thing you mentioned was stewardship. And honestly, Jim, that's the most important piece of this. And that's where we screw up.
We're not talking about a one-time transaction. We want a lifetime friendship, right?
Exactly.
So tell us about stewardship. What are some of the things you like?
I guess I'm going to come back to that same word we talked about. The number one thing is genuine appreciation. And I say probably genuine 10,000 times, because it's not, oh, we're so grateful for what you've done. Anybody can feel a fake a mile away. And it is something that I think we have to be wary of as development professionals. We do use the words and write the note cards, and we do a lot of this stuff on a daily basis. And we have to also be sure we're taking some time to sit back, and when I write a note, I visualize the person I'm writing to. I think about that person, and I'm talking to that person. I'm not writing the same sentence for the 17th time that morning so I can get these blasted things out, right? I mean, the spirit in which you approach appreciation is important. And I'd be interested in how you feel about this, Jim. I think there's a massive difference between appreciation and recognition.
Yeah.
So, your name might be on the building, or you might be giving an anonymous gift, which is the largest growing major gift we have out there, are anonymous. And you don't want that recognition.
I personally, I work for 3 universities, none as big as UW. I think the recognition factor is overblown in the minds of a lot of nonprofit leaders. I think it's kind of a back end issue. It's not a motivation. It's almost, they do it as a favor to the nonprofit, not to glorify themselves.
I agree. I agree with you, Jim. And I do think, and for the person, so in Madison, Wisconsin, we have a lot of things named for Jack Lucier, who I personally knew, and he's a wonderful human being. We have the Lucier Education Center, we have Lucier Heritage Park, and Jack Lucier also followed my band. Never missed a gig.
Okay, now I like him. Now I like him.
And, and he didn't have family, and this was sort of the way he left his legacy.
Yeah.
Wonderful, giving, joyful giver, human being. And that worked for him. And he was a very successful businessman, and he wanted his gifts to demonstrate that you could come from nothing and really become successful by hard work, by focus. And, it's kind of cute because there was never a gig he didn't show up with his $1 off coupon for the cover fee. He was frugal and he was generous. And
hey, so before we go any further, what was the name of your band? What was the name of your band?
Is the name of our band.
Okay, what is the name of your band?
Marcy and the Highlights.
How's that? Is that HILIGS or what?
Nope. I'm pretty conservative, so it's spelled the way HIGHLIGHTS.
Okay.
So it's the full McGillicuddy. So if you try to find the website, it's MarcyAndTHEHIGHLIGHTS.
Okay.
We played just last night.
If we have board members or volunteers who are uncomfortable with asking people to invest in their nonprofit, what other ways can they contribute to resource development success?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. When I do a board training, the first thing I tell the board members is, you never have to ask for another gift again, only to have the staff go, right? And I say, you never have to ask for another gift again. I'm giving you permission to never do that. Now, let's work through this whole, and by the end of the day, you might be comfortable doing it, but if you're not, don't. And I let them know the most important phases in that cycle you just outlined, Jim, is what you're calling cultivation, and I call creating a joyful giver. I have new names for all of those things. And stewardship, which I call being a grateful recipient. So help me create a joyful giver and help me be a grateful recipient.
It sounds like to me, if you create a joyful giver, you have a donor for life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I wish people understood that we as development people we cannot do this alone. There are not enough hours in the day for us to artfully thank and recognize and engage all the people that we want to have in our nonprofit families. We need our board members and other volunteers to help us. So they can do that. Now, if they're comfortable, and I teach a 3-sentence ask, as ask for anything artfully. But by the time we do that, oftentimes board members say, I can do that. I'm comfortable with that. And they get it. Plus, when they also understand it's not, hi, Jim, will you marry me? That it's something that comes from a relationship authentically and genuinely created over creating that joyful giver. And I guess the biggest thing is, and I just really want to thump on this. I think the hardest thing that we have as development professionals, and this may not be where you want me to say this, but the hardest thing is in our little minds, we're going, my job is to raise money. I'm here with this person because I'm supposed to be raising money. Okay, but if we can set that aside and instead see that as the product of us really teasing out what will bring that person joy. I just can't say that enough, because when we really, and when somebody says to me, well, you're here to talk about money, right? I say, well, not really. I'm here to first see if there's something in our organization that your gift towards would make you just get up in the morning and say, I am so glad I did that. I am so delighted with what I did with my money. I said, that would make me happy.
Hey, Marcy, one
Yeah.
of the things that's happening in trends, you and I follow Giving USA very carefully. And I love you pointed out that the share from individuals has stayed pretty consistently around 65 to 70%. I think it was 67% last time. But one of the other trends is that more and more of the total gift income is coming from smaller and bigger donors. It used to be an 80-20 split. I think now it's a 90-10 split. What are your comments on having so much gift income come from such a small slice of the donor pie?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I agree with you with 90-10. I think it's 95-5.
Okay, let's say it's 95-5. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, I'm
even,
sorry for being so conservative. And then you have to sing even more. Explain us. Why is there such a...
well, I do think that I do think that donors have. I do think we have an opportunity to engage more people who have capacity to being generous. And the change I see is not so much a function of wealth, but as a function of and I'm trying to be kind to my profession that I love, but our lack of engaging more people to be part of what we do. I think it's way too easy. If I told you the number of organizations that I work with that say, well, we get, 25% of our funding from,
Yeah,
from Mr. X, right? Or Mrs.
yeah,
X. Well, no, that's not a good situation. What are
no,
you doing to be sure that if something happens to Mr. X, you can manage
right.
it? And we haven't asked ourselves those questions. So I think it more is that we have to dedicate time to bringing along the relationships of tomorrow. And I'm not going back even to, I know Randa's going to talk about millennials and all that, but I'm saying even in the great generation and even in our older donors,
Yeah,
we have to spend more time connecting more people to what we do. So
yeah,
I don't see it as I see it as a challenge to us as more donors. And something else just jumped into my head, Jim, and you can help me work this out.
yeah,
But I also see that we have more major donors who are creating their own foundations because they
yeah,
want to be sure we use their money for what they're going to use it for.
yeah,
And those very major donors also are very carefully establishing the agreements with which they give those very major gifts to ensure that everyone's in agreement with how that money is going to be spent.
yeah,
So I mean, I guess I say it's a trend to me that says we maybe spend too much time with some of those that we know, and we
yeah.
need to get into out of our comfort zone and engage more. And we need to pay better attention to assuring donors that we will use the money for the purposes that they have designated.
I'll tell you what, there's been enough baby boomer talk here. I'd like to bring Randa in to infuse our conversation with some millennial thinking. Randa, I think you got a couple of questions for our esteemed authority. I got plenty of questions. Randa, are you okay?
I think she might have frozen, so she's just backing out and coming back in. There he
Yeah,
is.
okay. Yeah, you look unfrozen.
And now she is.
Yes.
A little younger than us, Marcy.
I am loving everything you have to say, Marcy. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. So I'm curious, you knew I was going to ask about, I mean, I'm not asking for a friend here. What are the key differences that you notice in fundraising between the generations? I'm curious if you see trends.
Randa, I'm gonna be real transparent here and say I don't spend a lot of time in that space. But I look at it more. So some of the things I've experienced might help you understand this. So I was at a very major conference once, and there was a room full of people, probably 400 or 500, big room, talking about those millennials, right? And they got up to the front of the stage and they said, now we all know millennials do da 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 da. And there must have been 20 people who got up and threw down their papers and stomped out of the room. And I thought, good for you, because I don't want anybody to broad brush. I understand we've been born at different times and we have different experiences and we have different comfort levels with technology and all those kinds of things. But I really am a person who's walked through life saying people are pretty much the same.
Yeah, I don't like putting labels. I don't know about you, Marcy. I think, talk about language. I don't like labels. I think that dishonors our profession.
I totally agree with you, Jim. And labels like, slow learner, in school.
I'll sign up for that one.
A B level, when classes used to be, you had the A group in reading and then you had the B group in reading, and then, don't put those labels on people. So I guess, Randa, I don't know that I can help you any more than by saying my advice with the whole millennial field is to just do the same kind of thing. Listen to them. Say, how do you want to be appreciated? How do you want to be approached? How do you want to be communicated with? You, this person, not you, part of the millennials. But that could be very old school. So you tell me.
I really appreciate that, because I've been in, webinars and different seminars and workshops where people talk a lot about the differences in our generations and fundraising. And to be honest with you, in the space that I'm in, before I started working at SAFE, I spent a dozen years working in 3 different Texas opera companies. And when I shifted,
all in Texas, by the way, Marcy.
In Texas, it's that big of a state. But I really thought, perhaps naively, that it was going to be very different because the donor demographics were in the data shown to be very different. And I got to tell you, it's not. All that experience I gained in those 12 years doing that work with a demographic that was largely in the opera field, people over 65. And now I'm working with people of all generations at SAFE. Everybody, exactly what you're saying applies. Exactly what you've said. People just want to be asked.
Yeah,
and Marcy, I would say, I don't care if you're 10 or 100 years old, you're going to give because of something called the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're all nodding. Yes, sir.
Okay, Randa. Okay, you got another question for our?
Sure. Yeah. I was wondering, before we had all this conversation, so this feels very off topic now, but what I was thinking before we started chatting was, have you seen evidence that tells you that people who are just newer to philanthropy are more or less open to viewing fundraising or philanthropy as a joyful experience?
I like that question.
And I do too. And I think it teases out something I still struggle with. I know families where, one brother is one of the most generous people I've ever known. And his brother, he's going to go to his grave with his first dime. How can 2 people raised by the same thing?
Yeah,
and
that baffles me when you meet, family members that are so different.
And so what experiences happen in a kid's life? I know some, I had donors who would drag their kids along to these recognition events for major, major gifts, and their grandkids. And they wanted all that noise and chaos in the room because they wanted their kids to see them being philanthropic. That was important to them. And, people will let somebody take the star off the giving Christmas tree so they can buy a gift for somebody and understand what that means to give some, right? So we try to teach philanthropy, but what instills in somebody that idea of, like some people say to me, Marcy, how'd you ever get to be so joyful?
He drinks a lot of coffee.
I think that joyfulness comes from gratitude.
Yeah.
I think when we walk through life, and like I start my day, well, first off, I start my day by, as I teach and train, I create my life. I say it every morning. My husband's put up with it for 33 years. It's the way it is. But then I say, and what am I grateful for today? And so I think that gratitude inspires joy.
Yeah.
So as you think about millennials or anybody, how do we instill a spirit of gratitude?
Yeah.
Did that help at all, Randa? Can you turn that into an answer?
Yeah, that helped very much. Gratitude inspires joy. I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. Thank
Hey,
you.
Randa, I'm gonna ask a question and then you're gonna continue. Marcy, I think you and I share this perspective. You know, typically, there's the person who asks, there's the person who gives, and there's the people who benefit. And people like you and me, it's going to sound like we make this up, but I seriously believe from my 40 years in the profession that the donor gets the most satisfaction from the philanthropic loop. Can you share some of your favorite stories about joyful philanthropy?
God, that's hard. I wouldn't even know how to start talking about favorite stories. I think what is fun about having stepped away from I have donor stories at two different levels. I have donor stories from my own experience as a development professional working with donors, making the asks. And then I have stories with my clients. Um, and what comes to mind, I guess, for me are those lifelong relationships that we
Yeah.
form, and how serious they are. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, his name is Ben Porter, and he named the Porter Boathouse. He was a crew person at the University of Wisconsin. He called and said, guess what? It's the 150th anniversary of the crew. And I said, wow. And I said, so you're going to be back in town? And he said, yeah. So we met up. He's approaching 90. And I spent the entire weekend with him at that crew event and watching the younger crew members. And they might have gotten a little bit of the idea planted by somebody you might know, would go up to Ben and say, you're Ben Porter. I wanted those younger people to understand that here stood the man that invested those dollars so that they had a boathouse.
Yeah.
And watching them talk with him, um, it was just incredible. So I think my favorite stories are those long ones where I actually get, another one is we are number one in cranberries in Wisconsin. Just thought I'd
Yeah, Massachusetts is number 2, by the way.
Yes, sir. Massachusetts is number 2. And we kind of
And we're going to catch up to you sometime. We're going to catch up to you.
we spar over that a little bit, Jim.
Yeah.
But we have the first chair in cranberry research in Wisconsin, and I was delighted to be part of that. And now I'm still in touch with the dad who did it. But the backstory of that is that, he and this is unusual, Jim, and you'll relate to this, but on my very first call, he said to me, Marcy, my dad's not well. He doesn't have much time. I want to get this done in as quick a time as possible. What do we do? And that's not normally how you build a relationship.
No.
But we got that chair established. We had a recognition party for him, and he passed the next week.
No.
So, and now moving fast forward, dad is of age, daughter and son have taken over the marsh. The chair's established. The first professor has retired. The second professor is in that chair and working with the kids. That's my favorite thing. It's that the generations have moved on.
That's great. Hey, Randall, I have another question. Let's give you another, we here need more millennial insights. How about another question?
Well, so I'm curious now, I'm in a place in my own career where I'm seeing a shift. And I'm wondering, aside from gratitude, what strategies can leaders use to help themselves and their teams, especially the newer generation that's joining their teams and starting their fundraising careers, to more genuinely embody that joy?
This answer might surprise you.
Oh.
I think have an attitude from the top that no one person brings in a gift.
It
And
takes a village, doesn't it? It takes a
yeah,
village.
yeah. And, a lot of times that principal fundraiser, comes in and puffs out their
Yeah.
chests and talks about, right? And we used to have a practice, and I encourage it, and I'm going to show you the right way and then what I think is really the wrong way. But the right way is think about all of the things that influence the experience that that particular giver had. From the
Yeah.
receptionist, who is she face down in her computer, or does she look up when he
Yeah.
walks in the door and says, good morning, welcome, right?
And smiles.
And smiles, and to the researcher that helps us with the data we need. And I always liked to kind of summarize a donor's journey when we announced a major gift and talk about all of the different people, from the faculty member who helped, from the researcher who helped, from the receptionist who was part of it, everybody who was part of that experience. And to me, that's where you get a culture of generosity and a culture of joy. When everyone is acknowledged for their role and importance, in creating that relationship. So now let me tell you how not to do it. That really gets me worked up is when you're and a development colleague are supposed to decide how you're going to trade off credit in the blasted system. Two people make a call and they have to debate who gets credit for that call. I can't think of anything that inspires divisiveness or all the things that we don't want to do more than sharing credit. I'm all for and I like team calling, and I think that it also creates an environment where a donor doesn't feel like they only have their person at the foundation, but they know more than one person. So I don't know if that answered your question, but get everybody involved and that joy just spreads like water pouring over a waterfall.
Hey, Marcy, someone we know, can I hold it? Wait, why isn't this book showing? Just wrote how to score your first or next $1 million gift.
Yeah, I know who that is, Jim.
Can you share your experience with organizations that received the first $1 million gift, what it meant internally and externally?
And I'll go back to where I always start, Jim. I probably think the biggest change in those organizations is a change in mindset. Oh my goodness, we can do this. So that first $1 million gift is so important. And I had an opportunity just last week with a client who we write out our 3-sentence asks. And I asked him that I said to him, we're going to write down these asks. And one of his asks was for 4 million. And he called me very excitedly last week to say he had spoken that ask. And the individual he asked said, well, let's talk about how we can make this happen. And this is from somebody who probably had never asked for more than 50,000 before. And to me, the first time that you take in that you have people who care enough about your organization and that you are worthy of investments at that magnitude, it just catapults you to a whole new level of what you can do in your organization.
Right.
So that first $1 million gift is transformational, Jim.
Yeah. Marcy, I want to thank, we learn in life, they're the gifts of time, talent, and treasure. And as we get older and hopefully wiser, we realize that actually time's a more precious gift than money, because unlike money, you can never replace time. And we know how busy you are, crisscrossing the Americas and God knows where else. Thank you for sharing a wonderful, joyful hour with us. This is your contact information. And folks, go to her website. It is rich with information and best practices and tips that, again, one of the best known and respected authorities in our profession has shared with her colleagues. And this is her contact, and you're welcome. Somehow she'll fit you into her speaking schedule. I don't know how, but she has a master scheduler and everything. And let me tell you, I don't know anyone that didn't kind of really treasure every minute they have spent with Marcy. So thank you for the most precious of all gifts, your time. And I want to thank our learning community audience for what you do each and every day to make the world better. You're the reason that people like Marcy, Aranda, and me do what we do.
Great.
So Marcy, give our regards to Canada.
Thank you.
And thank you for the leadership that you have provided our profession. And thank you for your friendship.
Thank you.